Good morning. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Dr. Thomason, roll call, please.
President Kaler, members of the board, please let the record show that we have all board members' attendance. Mr. Witovich is attending telephonically.
Thank you very much. We're going to have a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Well, we have a lot to get through today, so I move that we approve the agenda.
Second. Oh,
Any questions or concerns on the agenda this morning? All those in favor?
aye.
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 I heard you, Mr. Witovich. Motion passes 5-0. Upcoming events. Dr. Thomason.
President Kaler, members of the board. So, as this is coming near the end of the school year, on Thursday, May 21st, we do have our virtual graduation for Higley and Williamsfield. Those will be available for download after they have aired the first time. Higley's will start at 9:30 a.m. on May 21st, followed by Williamsfield High School at 2:30 p.m. on May 21st. Then on Friday, June 12th, we do have a governing board meeting and superintendent evaluation here at the district office, followed by a meeting on Wednesday, June 24th, the governing board meeting starting at 5:30 here at the district office also. So that will be the next month and upcoming graduation events.
I also think, Mrs. Reach, we have June 20th, our board retreat scheduled too at 8 a.m. I think that's also coming up, just to put that on the calendar as well. Thank you, Dr. Thomason. We're going to go on to board comments. Would anybody like to speak to us? Go ahead, Mrs. Wilson.
I just wanted to thank everyone. I've been able to watch so many things this month because it's not as packed, I feel like. We've gotten to see, I actually got to see the virtual talent show over at Gateway, and that was awesome to see that they're still doing something to keep those kids engaged. And it was just really fun to see the talents that maybe couldn't normally happen in a gym, that they were able to, show us, skateboarding and all the things. And then I've also caught a lot of the morning announcements at some of the different campuses, Coronado especially. They're doing them on Instagram for the kids, and it's just been fun to see. And I just appreciate just the fun, like to be able to see people still that we know, and we can see that the kids are really enjoying it. I also would like to ask Dr. Thomason, I've been asked a couple questions, and I have already prepped him for this, but I did want to ask him from teachers' standpoint how they are coming back next year, if that's possible to ask.
President Kaler, members of the board, Mrs. Wilson, we will be following the CDC recommendations from the federal government and also the recommendations from Governor Ducey within the state of Arizona. At this time, we have opened it up under Phase 1. Phase 1 still has gatherings of 10 people or less that are recommended, and so we're following those precautions. And then Phase 2 would allow for opening up of some school areas with gatherings of 50 individuals or less. Phase 3, we imagine, will be happening when school starts up, but we'll be following the CDC and the guidelines from the state of Arizona. We do have an ace in the hole with Dr. Don Foley that is on the state committee to help us give us that information. And so we know that there'll be changes as the school year starts, but we don't know exactly what those will be. At this time, we are taking a look at the cleaning supplies we have, the cleaning requirements for the CDC and those type of things, social distancing opportunities, and we're taking a look at all those along with several different educational components that may or may not take place when we return in July. All of those we're running through. We've got plan A, B, C, and D, and it goes on depending on what is required from the CDC and the state of Arizona. But we are continually working on that, and so we'll be bringing updates to you on a regular basis.
Thank you.
President Kaler. I just want to thank all of
our high school staff, our district administration. Governor Ducey did come out with his announcement yesterday that he is going to let the stay order expire. But like Dr. Thomason said, we're still in phase 1. It still limits gatherings. Just because Governor Ducey is allowing this order to expire does not mean we can hold a full in-person graduation. It's still not within the guidelines that our state or CDC is recommending. So thank you for taking that into consideration. We're still following what we're supposed to be doing. No matter what's on the news, no matter how large people are gathering, we are following what our guidance and direction is for school districts. And I got to see part of the filming of the Williamsfield virtual graduation yesterday. I know Mrs. Kaler got to see it on Monday. And I think you guys knocked it out of the park. I think you guys have done an amazing job to give our students the next best thing. They had the opportunity to walk across the stage in their cap and gown and be recognized. They will have a little spotlight. Their name was called. Everything that we could do next to holding a full in-person graduation, I think you guys have done. So the team that you've put together, the principals with the high school, everyone working from HCPA, teachers, they were really, really excited and wanted to make it as special for those kids as they could. There were teachers outside the HCPA that as the kids came out, they cheered and clapped for them. So they had some of that feeling. And so I just want to thank you guys for pulling that all together. It was a lot of work, and I think it's going to be great. But I appreciate the actual emotion and thought on it's not just graduation. How can we make them feel the best we can with what we have? So again, thank you for pulling all of that together. I know it was a short time frame, and I'm just excited to see these virtual graduations, and I think the students really appreciated it. So I just wanted to give a shout out to everyone, and I know I talked to the assistant principals who are normally in charge of graduation, and huge graduation, Wells Fargo Arena, there's usually, or it's Desert Financial now, there's a lot of logistics that go into that and prep and plan, and this was 10 times harder for them. But they put the work in, they made it happen, and I just want to say thank you.
Yes, Mrs. Reese, I echo your sentiments. It was surreal watching employees with Ghostbuster-looking deodorizers and wiping down everything in between, but I was so thankful that we took all the precautions that we possibly could. I even heard that some of our schools, they're not even doing the cap and gown portraits, which Lou Coopy came and did portraits for us, and they've only done a handful of schools already. So we have done everything we possibly can in our power safely to honor these kids. And I know that that's not what every parent can, wants to hear. They might not think we did enough, but we can still just do the best we can in this crazy world we're in right now. So, and I just want to shout out too, because there's so many unique, cool ideas that have come because of these situations. We have teachers doing virtual cheer tryouts, and dance places have opened up to have one person at a time do their routine so that they can still have a dance. And we've gotten so creative in the educational world to still honor students. I know that Sossaman is now, I think they're doing their drive-by I think it's a drive-by excellence or something. I mean, there are just so many things out there. I can't even keep track of what's going on at every school to honor the little kindergartners and the sixth graders and the eighth graders. And like, I feel like we've gotten so creative, and I'm just so grateful. So thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to consent. And I move that the governing board approves consent agenda items 5.1 to 5.10.
Second.
I just want to point out on 5.6, we had Barrett Financial give a $50,000 donation to wipe out all of our lunch debt. And it came to fruition because an employee was just thinking, what could we do? He had a student here at Higley, and they foregoed their bonuses as employees so that they could provide that $50,000. And so I just want to again thank them so much on behalf of the board and our community. And yeah, that was a big chunk of change. Thank you. Any other questions or comments on consent? Mr. Glover.
Surprise. Thank you, Madam President. Just two things. 5.9, I just have to make this comment that we all have to make in the hopes of educating our public. So this is a screening testing of students policy. I'm not arguing against the fact that vision testing is good for kids, but you have the state government mandating something and again, not giving any money to get that task done. And furthermore, I often hear people decry, how much we spend on administration. But administration, the notion that conjures up is that you have principals driving Mercedes-Benz, and it's all going to those administrative costs. But this vision testing is an administrative cost, and so we just have to keep that in mind, I think, when we talk about administrative costs and continue to help educate the public. So every time something like this comes up, I will continue to voice that. And then the second thing is item 5.10, and it is a modification for the evaluation process. And as you guys alluded to earlier, we're finding out that some of the things that we thought were important aren't important, or as important as we thought, and there's things that we're learning about how we could do better and be more efficient. So I just want to say a couple things about our evaluation process. One, I think we have agreed to at some point look at them more carefully. I think it should be done before contracts are issued. I think that should be a goal of any evaluation instrument. I'd like to see them simplified. I'd like to see them focus their support for young and new to the profession teachers and teachers who are struggling and could improve. As opposed to making it easier, less work for qualified veteran teachers that we know are doing a good job. I think our PLCs help all teachers work to get better, and so you have PLCs, but then you always had evaluations. So what redundancies are there that we can possibly eliminate? I think there's an opportunity to offer multi-year contracts for veteran teachers that are doing a good job, and so we don't have to spend our time and effort and resources on them because we know that they're doing a good job, and we can focus on some of the people that we need to keep in the classroom that can improve, and spend our money where it will do the most good. Some of the instruments that exist across this nation are very cumbersome for the person being evaluated and the person that is the evaluator. So making that more simplified and streamlined would be good. I'm not sure that doing full-on, or even we have something that is a little bit less, but it's not as less as I would like for some of the folks who are, well, anyway, doing an evaluation, a comprehensive evaluation for every employee every single year is really not going to have the desired effect. We just don't, the people who do the evaluations don't have the time to really do that effectively. So I hope it's something that district administrators, school administrators, the HEA, and our teachers can get together and endeavor to improve as time goes on.
Thank you, Mr. Glover. I think we've all learned that less is more right now in this pandemic, that we have been able to continue to function and do a lot of things but less of them. So yes, thank you for those comments. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Okay, we are going on to our, well, this is just our monthly, 6.1, monthly financial report. Any questions for Mr. Holland this morning? We're going to be hearing from him in a little bit on another budget item. No questions? Okay. Dr. Foley is going to update us here on the updated calendar for 2021 school year.
Thank you. Yes, so I have a quick update for you on our calendar committee based on our conversation at our last meeting. I took back the governing board's feedback, particularly around middle school parent-teacher conferences, PD. The month of September and October were our and February were needing to be reevaluated. So if you'll slide to the next slide, I'm happy to provide some feedback. So following our meeting on Wednesday morning, met with our middle school advisory group with our administrators to talk through the feedback so that we could bring a recommendation to the calendar committee the following week. One of the things that we decided was really important, looking at the data on the number of parent-teacher conferences, we decided that we wanted to recommend to the calendar committee to keep the fall ones because those were utilized really well, and that knowing that time was something that we felt was really important to have, particularly with that transition. Obviously, moving it back and keeping it so it was at a time was more important, where we had more information. They wanted to keep it there. The other thing we talked about was consistency based on the feedback you had provided on making the Thursday the later evening Friday. You'll notice that these no longer back up to a 3-day weekend so that there's some consistency between those parent-teacher conferences. We also decided to, for the month of September, we kept the early release for the middle schools for this reason. The hard part is the way we're doing the professional development, elementary and high school, theirs isn't highlighted out because it's an every Wednesday thing. Keeping them consistent, particularly with a break, so that they had that PD we wanted to protect and keep. It just so happens that next year in that month of September, with fall break falling at the end of it, September is going to be an interesting month. But we also decided that moving or taking away that time made middle schools just a little bit less, and we thought that was not the best proposal. So we decided to bring those recommendations to our calendar committee, who then reviewed that and felt that that were some good recommendations. So next slide. So we made those revision updates. That was fabulous feedback. In fact, it led to some great conversation with both the middle school administration and teacher team and the committee. And then we made the adjustments to the following calendars with that feedback. So that's what was updated for those calendars. Next slide. What we did then was updated the instructional minutes because that put back some instructional minutes for middle school so that when we took a look at it, it was more accurate. So the way the calendar kind of crumbled. Next slide. And no change was made to the professional development. So the thing we, again, feel really good about is the equity at the secondary level for professional development for our teachers in unique ways, but consistently across, and something we're proud of. Next slide. I just want to tell you again how much I appreciate the members of this committee. Again, multiple perspectives were represented here, including Mrs. Wilson, who was on here representing the governing board, and as a parent of an elementary, an incoming middle, and a high school parent. So again, we had great conversation and dialogue, and I think felt a lot of difficult conversations that are bringing our proposal to you. So we are comfortable today bringing these recommendations to you for consideration for approval.
Thank you, Dr. Foley. Are there any questions for Dr. Foley on these calendars?
Well, President
Yes.
Kaler, just a comment. I'm pleased, and I thank the committee as well, but the removal of the middle school conferences, in the spring, giving teachers the gift of time is one of the best things you can give to a teacher, so appreciate the consideration of that.
Thank you
Yes.
for the feedback. It led to great dialogue, again, and a great committee representation here. So thank you for the feedback.
President Kaler?
Yes, Mrs. Reed?
To kind of reiterate what Mr. Glover said, I appreciate the conversation and the compromise and looking at all the viewpoints and seeing what's necessary, what really works, what do we need to do. And I appreciate you putting the minutes out there. We do exceed the state minutes, but we do have the expectation of our community and our students that we're not about doing the bare minimum. We're not about, well, we don't need to do this. Our students need this. Our community needs this. And I appreciate that, and giving that springtime back to the teachers to make use of our time wisely. If it was necessary, I'm open to that conversation as well, but I appreciate you guys taking the feedback, going back and having the conversation, and a good compromise. I agree, September is going to be a very interesting month, but it's a month and we'll get through it. So thank you very much.
Yes, Dr. Foley, looking at those minutes too, the last 2 years, I'm so grateful we've had those extra minutes because that saved us during the Red for Ed movement and not having children still going, past the end date of school again this year. I mean, it's just every year we think, well, we're fine, nothing's going to happen, and then something happens. So it's been very unique, to say the least. And the other part of this equation that I love is that we're giving out to our community future calendars for planning. People love to plan vacations years in advance in this community from what I've gathered. So, this is awesome that people coming to our community can see that we've made a plan for years to come. So thank you.
There is one thing in the next year's calendar. Dr. Foley and I had discussed it. We actually discussed it in our committee as well, that it does not align with Chandler, so we may get a little feedback for that, just to let everyone know on the board. So you may get some parents asking why it doesn't fully align with Chandler, Gilbert, Queen Creek, but that calendar was set forth in, what year did we decide, Dr. Foley? Do you remember? Okay, over 4 years ago. So just to reiterate, we just kind of added we tweaked that calendar. We didn't want to switch any vacation times for families who had already planned that spring break out in advance, like Mrs. Kaler said, but we also wanted to just maybe we may get some feedback on that, so just so you guys know the history of it, so you can kind of help with that if that question comes up.
Thank you for that. Okay. Any other comments? Mr. Witovich, anything?
No comment, thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to move to 6.3, and I move that the governing board approves the calendars committee's recommended calendars for 2020 through 2021, 2021 through 2022, 2022 through 2023, 2023 through 2024, and finally 2024 through 2025 school years.
Second.
Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Okay, moving on to 6.4, and Mr. Holland, I believe we owe you a thank you for our treats. He sugared us up. I don't know if anybody can see this on the cameras, but we are sugared up for the day. Thank you. And we're going to go over our revised budget.
Yes, good morning, President Kaler. Yes, I was not able to find that little money candy that I've given you guys in the past, so I had to come up with an alternate plan. So I tried to give everybody a little bit of sample. Hopefully there's something there that you guys like. So I do have a couple of jokes for you today, so we'll see if these are better than others in the past. So the first one is, I told my suitcases that there will be no vacation this year. Now I'm dealing with emotional baggage. Exactly. And the next one is, how do you get straight A's in school? Use a ruler. Jokes are hard to find. So good morning, President Kaler, members of the board, Dr. Thomason, Cabinet. Today I have for you a quick highlight of the key changes for our 1920 revised budget for this school year. Next slide, please. We are doing this presentation and revising our budget today to comply with Arizona Revised Statute 1594301B. Next slide. So for this year, for the 1920 school year, I brought you 3 budgets. First, I brought you our proposed budget on June 14th. Then I came back on June the 26th of 19 and asked you to please adopt that budget. And then here we are today on May the 13th revising that budget, which is the final revision for the 1920 school year. Next month, I will bring you next year's budget. So again, there are multiple factors that you have to take into consideration. Next slide, please. That there are multiple factors that you have to take into consideration when you're developing a budget. Some of the key things that are factors affecting this year's revised budget is student enrollment. So we did have some ADM growth for the year, so we'll be picking that up. Capital transfers, typical, as well as our carry forward from the 18-19 school year. And also another one that's not highlighted is the adjustments from ADE. Next slide. So our ADM for this year, as I mentioned, we have a little bit of an increase. So when we adopted the budget for the year, our Group A weight, which is the majority of our funding, was at 14,439. We are revising today at 14,976, which is an increase of 537.236. Again, this is ADM, not necessarily student count. Next, we have our Group B, which is our special programs, and this is an add-on to A. So we adopted at 2601, we're revising today at 2385, which is an increase of 234.141. Bringing you, of course, to a grand total, our adopted ADM for the year, 17041, we're revising today at 17812, so that is an increase of 771.404. So I'm very happy that for that increase, of course.
Mr. Holland, if I remember correctly, we were doing flat last year, correct? We were not expecting this kind of growth, correct?
So this year's
So
budget
this
was
is
built based on flat enrollment, correct?
Thank you.
Next slide, please. Okay, so our major operating budget is our maintenance and operation budget. So we'll start with our revenue control limit. So the revenue control limit is based on a formula, which is where the ADM comes into play with some other factors. You'll see that there are several other categories there that we're going to talk about this morning, but those are all in addition to your M&O budget, so they're add-on type things. So when we adopt the budget, we use some budget estimates. And of course, now we actually know what those prior year expenditures are, as well as whether we have an increase or decrease in our enrollment. So our revenue control limit was $73,993,335. We're revising today to 77.2, which is a little over $3.2 million increase. Our override, that is our maintenance and operation override, we estimated it to be a little over 11 million, 11.1111, whereas after ADE did their final calculation, it's 11,092, which is a $19,000 decrease. Our capital transfer, so every year we have to transfer a portion of our operating budget over to our capital budget to meet all the growing capital needs for the district. This year we chose to move $7 million, which we did at the beginning of the year. But because of the state of the economy and everything right now, normally we would move a portion of our increase over to help meet the growing capital needs. But because of the economy right now, we're not moving anything more. Our carryover, we automatically budget for $3.5 million, and we hope for more. So last year we did end the year a little over 3.6, so we are picking up a little over $189,000 from carryover from last school year. Next, we have our Prop 123. We estimated it to be around $532,000, and it actually came out to around $541,000. So that's a little over a $9,000 increase. So as a grand total, of course, we adopted at $82,137,291, and we're revising today at $85,555,639, which is a $3.4 million increase in our operating budget for this year. Next slide. Next, we have our unrestricted capital. Excuse me. So again, same sort of concept. We build this budget and adopt it based off of projections, and now we have final numbers. So today we adopted at $12,732,000, excuse me, $12,723,000. We're revising today a little over $13 million, so it's a $356,000 increase to our capital budget. We gained some interest over the year, so a little over $186,000 that we're adding for the interest. There's our capital transfer. We're not moving anything more, so that's 0. We have our district additional assistance. Again, we calculated or estimated a little over 4. ADE came back with 3.9, so that's a $96,000 decrease. So for a total of $23.7 million, we're revising to $24.2 million. So we're adding $445,820 to our capital budget. And of course, these capital, though it's a small amount, but every penny will help, especially with our middle school lease payment, our science curriculum adoption that we're planning for next year, our IT refresh, additional pupil transportation, etc. Next, the third highlight for this particular budget. Next, please. Thank you. Sorry. Is some additional funding that is just becoming available. Now, the district has not received these funds as of yet, but we know that they are coming. So this is the Federal CARES Act grant monies. This funding, how you would determine your allocation of your pot of money is you use your 1920 Title I allocation. So you'll notice on the screen, our allocation for this year was $868,743. You take 70% of that, that's how you arrive at the $608,120. Again, as I mentioned, that the district has not even received these funds as of yet. So of course, not all of these monies will be spent in the 1920 school year, so there will be a carryover going into 2021.
President Kaler, members of the board, we've also got some new information from the federal government that there's other opportunities for individuals to apply for those funds too, and so we will watch this very carefully to know exactly what the Higley Unified School District's portion of those funds will be, because there's other opportunities for some other entities to request those funds also. Again,
it's an estimate, and actually the directive from the Auditor General came out the night after I had already finished this budget and sent it to Darlene, so we had to go back and revise it. But nonetheless, it is here, and we will see how it goes from there. Again, waiting for final numbers. Next slide. So, as I said, it was kind of quick, 3 major highlights to our budget. There were some other areas that were slight increases, but these are the key things to keep in mind with this budget. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Holland. I always want to call you Dr. Holland. Just
It's
get
okay,
your
I'll take
doctorate
it.
already, okay, please? Christina, I'm sorry, Mrs. Reese.
Just a quick question. With the CARES Act money that we are anticipating, can you give a brief description as to what we plan to use that money for? It's additional money. It's not something we had allocated before. What is our intention for that $608,000?
So, Mrs. Reese, we do have a meeting that we are scheduling to kind of go over and evaluate exactly what those funds will be utilized for. I can tell you the allowable type of expenses for this funds are anything that basically is allowable through your federal program right now would be an allowable expense. So, for example, maybe we use a portion of these for some additional curriculum, or we use it for some additional technology. It kind of depends on whatever the committee kind of comes up with, correct, Dr. Foley?
So I know that the CARES Act is huge. and it has so many different bullet points. And I know that there's also other discussion on that money for school districts. And I believe part of that is to ensure that we're appropriately prepared for whatever our schools will look like in the future. We don't know. We haven't gotten there yet. So is that this money or is that separate money? Because I know that there is part of, for educational institutions, if we have to have hand washing sinks at every entrance, I mean, there's a cost to that. If we have to somehow put hand sanitizer at every entrance, there's a cost to that. Is that this money? Is that other monies? Because that CARES package is huge.
So these funds could be used for that. Of course, we haven't had this meeting, so I don't want to necessarily speak for like the group as a whole. But I would think that we would, of course, take all of that into consideration because, true, we don't know what next year is going to look like. And so we would be setting aside a portion of that for any of these types of other expenses. Plus, we are continuously looking for additional funding that may be coming available to help with any unforeseen type of expenses going forward.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Go ahead.
So, Mr. Holland, are we, the actual student count, we're up about, is it around 500 actual students?
That sounds about
Dr.
correct.
Sal-
I don't have that
It's
exact
about right,
number.
right?
That
So
is correct.
Pardon?
That is correct.
Okay, so it's about 500 students, and I will tell you that unexpectedly, our neighbor, Gilbert Public Schools, also is up 500. They did not anticipate going up at all. So what you have in the Gilbert area are 1,000 kids who have decided that the public education that we provide is better than some of the other choices that are out there, and I hope that trend continues. I'm happy to see it. Gilbert Public Schools is built out, so there's not new housing, new families necessarily. So it's a good thing. I hope that trend continues because I think we are the best game in town.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Glover. I agree. Seeing those numbers when we were expecting a flat is very exciting for Higley Unified School District, and I think that's hats off to like you say, Mr. Glover, the product that we provide here. It's top notch, and so I'm grateful for those that choose Higley for their home schools. Absolutely. I also appreciate just, again, helping me to understand a 70, 80. It's just such a massive amount of numbers that come at us, and thank you for making it clear to me, and I can understand it and comprehend it. I also appreciate, Mr. Glover, you talking about the different pots of money, because so many people don't understand what are administrative costs, what this pot of money, and the M&O, and it's just so vast in education, and so any chance that we can to try to clarify things, thank you for that. And we're fully transparent. You can find our budgets all over online. All our monies are for everybody to see, and yeah, so very good news. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Holland.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Witovich, any questions?
No questions.
Thank you. So I move that the governing board approve the 2019-2020 revised budget number 1 in accordance with the ARS 15-905G as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Holland.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
And now we are going to go to, I'm sorry, it is 6.5. I move that the board approves payment of Bow Arch invoice for the 2018 to 2019 fiscal year.
Second.
Is Mr. Fowler going to talk to this? Or the next one? This is just a payment that Schools Facilities Board project, it required a final sign off from the architect. It took a little bit longer, so we had to go into the next fiscal year. So again, it's from last year, if you wanted to clarify that, Dr. Fowler?
President Kaler, yes, you are correct. As we work with the State Facilities Board, sometimes there's some challenges that come with individual architects. Each one has their own personality. In this case, there was some disagreement between the State Facilities Board and this architect, and which caused a delay and pushed us into the next fiscal year. But we're just following the practice, and because it lapsed over into this fiscal year, that project is completed, and they're just looking for final payment. So that's how this is being rectified here.
Yes, this has happened a few times, so nothing new that we haven't seen before. Okay, all those, or any other questions or concerns?
President Kaler?
Yes.
Just a quick question. I see the date and that it was revised May 26th of 2019.
Yes.
So has there been a concern or conflict since May of 2019? It's taken almost a year.
The conflict has been getting the architect to finalize the sign-off, and so there's just been some delay with that process. So the project had been completed at 2019, but the sign-off, there's a disagreement between the specs that the state wrote and the architect, and so that's what the delay had been.
Okay, so this project was completed based on architectural plans, but there was a disagreement on something on the plans between the state and the architect, but that project was completed and we're getting that a year later?
It had to do with the warranty, disputing the warranty, and so the plans were followed per spec, but it was really the architect that was disputing that. So it took a while for them to agree, and that's what the delay was.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Next up, we are going to go to our food service, and that is 6.6. I move that the governing board approves the food service meal price changes for the 2020 to 21 school year.
Second.
Dr. Thomason and I had a good conversation about our food service, and this is a 5-cent increase for next year for our food service. If you want to kind of clarify what we had talked about and why we're bringing this forth today.
Yes, President Kaler, members of the board. So taking a look at our average monthly paid lunches across the district, if we keep the meal prices the same, we would go approximately in the whole each month $1,843.10. With the increase of 5 cents per lunch across all grade levels, that would still make us about even. So we're not looking to make money, but we're not looking to lose money either. And so with the new revised cost for meals at each grade level, it would be a break-even point, or if you take the average numbers, a loss of $5.50 per month over the average of the year. And so increasing it by 5 cents also flattens out the curve, and so the next time we have an increase, we wouldn't have to go for a 10-cent increase, we would just do a 5-cent increase. And so that's also more palatable for our community. So the average cost of a student that eats a lunch every single day would be $9 extra for the entire year, from the start to the end of the school year. And so that would be our recommendation, is just the increase to flatten out the curve and to make sure the district does not go in a hole for school lunches, and to make it more palatable for the next increase.
Yes, I agree with you, Dr. Thomason, that 5 cents now is easier for a lot of families than maybe 10 cents later. So I'm all for that. Are there any questions or concerns that you have for Mr. Witovich?
No questions.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0.
President Kaler, members of the board, I also wanted to let the governing board too, as I did take a look at our costs compared to our surrounding districts, and we would be less than Gilbert Public Schools, Chandler Unified School District, but we would be higher than Queen Creek, and we'd be higher than Mesa, just so we're in a ballpark. Okay. We're right in the middle of the Southeast Valley School Districts.
Thank you for that, Dr. Thomason. And with that, we are going to move on to 6.7. I move that the governing board approves the renewal of the food service contract with Compass Group USA, Inc. by and through its Chartwells division.
Second.
Comments, questions, and concerns. Dr. Thomason, or perhaps Mr. Holland, just what has been the feedback for Chartwells as far as their service, the product, the taste, I just want to hear what we're hearing from the community.
President Kaler, if you take a look at meal numbers, our meal numbers and our servings are up this year, including our a la carte service. And so across the board from elementary to high school, we are serving more lunches this year, which would give us a good indication that our community and our family do prefer the lunches. They're a higher quality and a higher caliber than they had been in the past. Also, too, the Chartwells company has been very easy to work with. We have gone to them on a couple of occasions and made recommendations for changes in service, changes for elementary through high school, and they're working with our student populations at the high school levels to give those kids an opportunity to come together and collaborate for meals that they enjoy. And so I'm very happy with the Chartwells service and their product that they're putting out for our school district. So I think it's a much better increase than we have had in the past. So I'm very pleased with Chartwells.
Mrs. Reese?
We were fortunate enough to have them come to a board meeting not too long ago, while it seems so long ago. What I appreciate about Chartwells is that they have a mobile cooking station, and they'll take that into our classrooms, into our SPED classrooms, and work with those students on how they can learn to cook and make something. And so they're very educational focused as well. And they've provided a lot of opportunities for our students, and not just serving our meals, but teaching kids about nutrition and kitchen safety and everything. So I really appreciate that they take a much larger interest and look at what they do, and it's not just a meal service. So I've been very pleased on what they've done in our district beyond just our meal service. So, and I've heard it is much better.
Mrs. Wilson?
I actually got to work with Chartwells. I volunteered one day. They needed some help preparing all these meals that we've been handing out. They're the company who's doing that for our kids for the last 2 months. And I went over and got to work with them. And it was just a fantastic staff that they have on staff over there. I was at HTA that day, and they just did a marvelous job. And they had to prepare for the whole weekend. And the ladies over there were just excited to work, and were excited to be working for Chartwells. I kind of tried to keep a low profile. I didn't quite want them to know who I was, and so they were very talkative and super nice and friendly to me, and just we're really excited to serve the kids still, and excited to be helping the community, which was a great piece to see that their employees are feeling very valued. So I just appreciate Chartwells in that.
Thank you. And Mr. Holland, they work well with you too? I know there was that financial piece and the supervisor piece from our previous food service. How's that all going?
So President Kaler, yes, we've had a much more positive experience this year with Chartwells than we had in our previous food service company. Sam and his team they're very good to work with. We do have regular meetings to try to stay connected and informed. And like Ms. Reese said, the feedback that we've received on the food has been very, very, very positive. And so it's been a good year.
Good to hear. Good to know. I know even the adults at the high schools like the lunches too, so must be doing something right over there.
President Kaler, members of the
Yes.
board, I would also like to remind our community that we will be having the pickup meal service at least through June 30th. Chartwells has agreed to do that, and we are serving about 6,000 meals a day, 3,000 breakfast, 3,000 lunch, and that is 7 days a week. And that is available from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. at different sites across the district.
Yes, I see when I'm sitting on my patio, I see the Cortina line going for their breakfast and gathering. So yes, it's been a great blessing to our community, and I'm thankful that Chartwells has been so great to work with this past year. Any comments, Mr. Witovich?
No, thank you.
Thank you. So with that said, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Holland. And now it's going to be the Dr. Fowler show with, let me get there, 6.8. I move that the governing board approves the contract 18-15-PV-111 job order contract, a 1 GPA contract for Wrighton, am I saying that properly? Wrighton Construction.
Second.
Okay, Dr. Fowler's going to give us a presentation.
We'll look to call those pictures up if we can. What I bring to the board today is the request to move forward with the architecture's work to revitalize the media centers and really bring them into the 21st century. I think a couple themes that I would like to highlight. First of all, is we're able to do this at a really reasonable cost. What we're looking at is creating media centers that really attract students, draw students in. A couple of the key pieces to the remodel that would do that. Number one is the cafe idea, a grab and go station, and a place for kids to get the types of things that they want in the morning or during breaks, and then a place to gather to partake of those things. And then the second piece is updating the design of the media center with flexible shelving and bookshelves that can be configured and moved, and to draw the kids in while they're there to stay for the media part. And then the third piece is the piece that allows for students to engage in some activity that is just kind of new and starting, which is the esports. And we know that that's very popular, probably more so now than ever, just with people being sequestered at home. And so that will allow for that. Also, we're incorporating some new meeting spaces, collaboration spaces, and at Higley High, a space that would allow for staff conferences and meetings, which is similar to what Waynesfield already has when we built the new building. So I apologize. I was hoping to have a video, but the architect told me it would take them 30 hours to put that together, and so I don't have that. But the pictures, timeline, as you can see, we'll able to get this work done in time for the start of school. It would be great for those students to come back. And interestingly, just on a side note, my wife is an English lit major, and so she would kind of be in my school of thought in terms of what a media center looks like. And interestingly, with my 14-year-old who's entering into high school and having some of the comments about what's going to be in this media center, well, as soon as he heard video gaming and where's this place? Oh, so it was interesting, but it certainly piqued my 14-year-old's interest. Certainly my wife expressed some concerns about the traditional library, and I was reassuring her that that's still going to be part of this design as well, but it's something really that we're excited about, in creating a space that brings the students in to the media center and still provides the services that we've provided, but adding to that. And I know Dr. Thomason has spent a lot of time working with this particular architectural company as well to get that vision. And so please, Dr. Thomason, speak as well, whatever else you'd want to add.
President Kaler, members of the board, this has been 2 years in making this process to get something going. We have also included some of our media personnel in the conversations, along with our administrators from each of the high school campuses, to get things moving in the right direction. And also some of the students that we have had involved in the concepts of what we would like to do. We know that the space that we are utilizing is not as big as we would like it to be, and so some of the things that we would like to add just cannot be physically put in there, and that would be some of the other opportunities for especially Williamsfield High School for some of the counseling and the career center and that aspect too. But we'll be bringing those individuals in to work with them and have spaces for them. There's individualized workrooms, so you can bring small group kids in. For Higley High School, we will have the training room that is equal to what we have at Williamsfield High School that was built with their addition. And so trying to keep both high schools at an equal footing in all areas is a difficult process, but we're moving forward and making great progress in that aspect too. The opportunities for guidance counselors to come in and work with groups of kids, and for our career counselors to come in and work with groups of kids too, will also be there at both of the high schools. And so we look forward to having that opportunity to share this space with many other groups of individuals that come into our media centers at both of our high schools.
Dr. Fowler, on the Williams, can we have the Higley slide, please, Ryan? So the back offices that, maybe the previous one shows the number, 613, 614, 615, and 616. Those offices are going to be designated for whom? Do we know that information?
President Kaler, members of the board, that would be a site decision, but at this time we do know that the career counselor is scheduled to be back there, along with, I believe, one of the special education EVIT coordinators that is also there working with our students that are looking at different career opportunities through CTE, and so they will also be in one of those offices at this time. The other two offices at this time, I do not know what the plans are for those.
Would our CGCC person possibly be in one of those offices?
Yes, I believe that's what it's scheduled for, but I do not want to speak for the school. But at both of the media centers, I believe our new advisor from Chandler Gilbert Community College would be scheduled to be in those media centers.
I personally would appreciate if that person could be in the media centers, just because I believe that they would be instrumental in talking to kids about college and career and all those opportunities. So I know that at Williamsfield it's a little bit configured a little bit differently, and they don't have those little office spaces. So I think our college and career person is very close to the media centers, and still available and could pop over and, like you say, do presentations and things like that. But definitely I think that the college and career person needs definitely some space.
Thank you, Mrs. Kaler. Also, too, with the Williamsfield Center, we did have one larger collaboration room to take an advantage of some of those opportunities for bringing more kids together. So it wouldn't be as small as some of the collaboration rooms we have at the Higley High School, because they have more space and more opportunities, especially with the training room being right next door. And so one of the collaboration rooms at Williamsfield High School will be larger than the one at Higley High School.
Okay, thank you for that.
President Kaler?
Yes, Mrs. Reese.
So I guess I'm a little confused. Initially, when we were talking about these cafes, this student union, I was told that that was being done by Chartwells, and that was not any cost to the district. And now I'm seeing a cost to the district. So when the conversation of cafe student union, that was presented by Chartwells. They had done it at other schools. They wanted to turn our media centers into these student unions. So now we're presented with additional costs to the district. How did that change?
President Kaler, Mrs. Reese, so the staffing of the area for food service would be Chartwell's responsibility. They would be taking care of that. A lot of the equipment and everything, just like our regular kitchens within the district pays for those. So Chartwell's is paying for a portion up front, but we do pay them back over 4 years for the improvements to the cafeteria, food service areas within the media centers. I'm not sure, I know that we talked about them giving us money up front, but it was never a gift from Chartwells. It was a loan from Chartwells. And we still have that loan still being carried out to be paid back over the 4 years of their contract.
Well, that wasn't the conversation we had. The conversation was Chartwells wanted to create these student unions and everything. So I guess my concern is, that was my understanding, is Chartwells was going to turn our media centers into these student unions. And this is the first time it's coming to the board for any type of conversation when they want to start demolition next week. And so the conversation that we have had was Chartwell's wanted to turn our media centers into student unions. Chartwell's wanted to do all that. And so now I'm being presented with a change that's going to cost the district money. And then the other thing is our two schools are very different. And Williamsfield can only enter through their hallways. So I know that through some conversations with between students and different faculty is how's that going to work at Williamsfield? Because the lunch times, those hallways are closed because class is still going on and you can't, I don't want to say herd, but have a lot of students coming in and out because class is happening. And so Williamsfield is set up very differently than Higley. Higley has outside entrances. There is no class disruption. So I know there was a lot of concern with the student union discussion at Williamsfield on how utilized it's going to be. Because are we going to unlock those hallways for the lunchtime so our students can use that? And if so, how disruptive is that to classes that are happening? Because it's way in the corner. There's no way to get to it without disrupting class. So the question and concern was what access will they have and how utilized would it be, since we're essentially changing the entire media center model and the books are all gone, and where's that going to be and what's that going to look like?
President Kaler and Mrs. Reese, the books are still going to be there. We'll still have the same opportunities for students that we currently have within the media centers. We'll still have books. We'll still have computers for students to use. We'll still have charging stations and opportunities. This would be an enhancement. Also at Williamsfield High School, when I've had conversations with the administration, the concern of the hallways has not come up within conversation. I will definitely work closely with Mr. Tannenbaum to figure out those solutions. We do also have 3 exits and entries for the Williamsfield High School Media Center 2 that we can utilize. 1 is from the outside and 2 is from the inside hallway. And so I will work closely with Mr. Tannenbaum to figure those operational issues out before we move forward.
Can we talk about just the funding for a few minutes, and where is this $1 million coming from for both of these?
President Kaler, members of the board, this was one of the funding options we had. Last November, we had an election to reallocate funds, and so this would be coming from our bond funds that we have that have already been paid for by our community and our district that we have within the accounts. And so the bond funds are already there, and we did go to our voters last November so we could utilize these funds in different areas, and this was one of the areas that we were looking at utilizing.
Thank you.
President
Mr. Glover.
Thank you, President Kaler.
Mr. Witovich, you're next after Mr. Glover. I heard you.
Oh, I can yield my
Can
time
you hear me?
if you'd like. Go ahead. If you'd like, Mr. Witovich, go ahead. I'll yield.
Mr. Witovich, you're up.
Okay. I would just like to, I have some comments in reference to this. Working in a student union building for a number of years, I've watched the national trend, and what the national trend is to consolidate the student services on a campus and bring them to one location for all students to have access to. And as board member Priest and myself have said over the years, it's so important for that average student to be seen and have services too as well. The more times that the students see the services, they have the opportunity to take a look at them. The words that they're using nowadays is game changer, bringing new life to campus, creates a culture on campus, those type of things. I'm not seeing that in this drawing. When you're creating a student union building, you're bringing the student store, you're bringing the learning center, you're bringing the career center. I don't like the thing we're going to pop down and do a presentation. No, it needs to be the hub. It all needs to be there. It needs to be the pulse of our school. This is an opportunity for us to move on. I think President Kaler, I shared with you a 2-minute video. Is it possible to the other board members to take a look at that so they understand where I'm coming from in this thought process?
Yes, Mr. Witovich, we have the video prepared.
Abby? Okay, I'll just go on in reference to my thoughts in reference to creating the hub. I'll start with the physical layout that you see in front of you between the two schools. The first one is take a look at where we have the so-called game rooms. Game rooms are off to the side, where I don't see how that is going to be properly monitored because it's off to the side, off in a corner. Your student union buildings nowadays, they have a welcome station in the middle. So when you first walk into the building, that you have a person who oversees the building that can direct you to what you need, be it the college advisors or any of the student services. Who's going to be watching this game room? I mean, when you see over at Williams Field, I can't even see where the central location is for the media specialist to sit. And how can they watch this from that location? That's a major concern that I have too, in reference to that. In reference to the difference, I do have some concerns in reference to the difference between the two schools. I feel there's a huge disparity when you take a look at what Higley has to offer, and then you take a look at Williamsfield's layout. Okay, where's the computers? Okay, where are when the college advisors are there on campus? Where are they going to work with the students to take the Accuplacer test and anything else that's going to be taking place for our dual enrollments? When somebody tells me we have a computer lab down the hallway, we're not getting it. Okay, we need to bring these resources together to one location and to help our students out in reference to that. I'm just going to say in closing, in reference to the setup, it's so important on the staffing. You've got to have the staffing that know what they're doing in this location, the person who's working that central location. I don't want to see an entry-level person located in there, and I don't know if President Kaler or President Reese, when you were on the board, how many times our library was empty for weeks at a time when that person was absent. So are we going to have enough staffing to cover in absences? And also, if you're only going to have one person in that huge room, if they're absent, you bring a substitute in there. The substitute's going to watch the gaming room and everything else like that. We got to give some thought to this. This is an opportunity for us to do things for the future and to make something, a room that we're proud of. And as I look at this room, I just see it as another classroom addition. Okay, it's nothing. When I walk into the room, I want to see that this is the pulse of this school. I want to see the enthusiasm. I want to see something when I walk in. And you know what? When I walk in this, when I see these drawings, like I said, it's just another hallway in a drawing. So the video that I sent to President Kaler, that perhaps you can show the other board members. You can share that one. It's a school in California, and I'll tell you, when you look at this promotional video for the student union building, you go, wow. You know, it's just the pulse and it's positive. I realize that school districts spend a great deal of money, but it's the concept that they have. It's the concept that they get it, that this is where we're bringing the counseling office, we're bringing the career center, we're bringing the student store, we're bringing the offices for the student clubs. I mean, this is and this is an opportunity that we can move forward, and I'm just not comfortable with this, and I'm just not pleased with what we've got, and I believe we should go back to the drawing board to see how we can utilize these services and make a new media student union center that we can be proud of.
Thank you, Mr. Witovich. Can I show the video now?
Harvey?
Mr. Witovich, we watched the video. Do you have anything else you'd like to add or say? Is there specific questions that you want answered
the
from
school
Dr.
district
Fowler?
spent a lot of money on this building, and it's beautiful. But where I'm going at with this, it's the concept. It's the concept of creating the pulse of this school and creating a place where the services can be. They get it, as you can see, and I want us to get it and to bring forward all the opportunities for the students on our campus. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Glover, did you have something you wanted to say?
Well, I do, but maybe you guys could answer the esports room question, because I do know, I don't want to take your time, but these are higher end computers, so it's not it's not a rumpus room, right?
President Kaler, members of the board, the esports center would not be open for students all day long. The students can just come in and start playing games during the middle of the day. The esports center would be a special opportunity for our esports team and our esports program to utilize that after school, before school, and different opportunities when they had an instructor or their coach that was there with them to utilize that area. So, I mean, it would be the same as a different sport or a different activity. So it's not going to be open to students to come in and play games all day long.
Yeah, okay, thanks. You know, and I think I'm tired, but I see a lot of the same elements of these things. It's hard to look at a piece of paper and picture what it looks like. And I thank President Kaler for talking about the funding source, because that was on my thing to talk about. But it's something that you and I have been talking about for a long time, so I'm glad to see it's moving forward. You know, things evolve and things change, and providing flexibility. You know, historically, it's kind of funny. If you go to any library, you know, that hasn't been redesigned since the 70s, it's like the heaviest, most undraggable furniture you can have in a room that screams for a need for flexible seating, movable bookshelves. I saw bookshelves, the verticals with wheels. So all those things will be big improvements and allow a lot of creative things for the space. I think you'll start to see it be a real hub. You know, I guess, you know, hearing the criticism, I wasn't aware of the criticism, but I guess future projects may be keeping us, you know, so it's not, here's the vote, and, you know, they're not seeing it. I guess we, you know, we can probably do better, but I'm excited for the prospect of this and the timeline and being able to get it done, and it can evolve and matriculate into the needs of the campus. So I'm pleased. I didn't know we weren't pleased.
President Kaler?
Thank you, Mr. Glover.
Yeah, I did want to address some of Mr. Witovich's concerns. Number one, first and foremost, I don't disagree with what Mr. Witovich says. I would love to be able to have our career counselors there. I'd love to have all of our guidance counselors there. I would love to have that opportunity to bring everyone in. I do understand that. But even in the Yorba video, that you do have to go down the hall. I have looked at those online and seen that you do have to travel a little bit to see some of those areas for some of those specialty needs. I do believe the concept and the draw is there. We're trying to create that excitement, that enthusiasm. I wish I had $40 million to build that building in Arizona. The cost of the building in California was almost $20 million. So we're looking at approximately $500,000 per school, and so there's a big discrepancy. I wish that Arizona schools were funded the same way as other states, but we are working on that. We're trying to create the excitement. We're trying to create the vibe that's there. I did have an opportunity when I was back in Maryland to go to the University of Maryland, to go to Harvard, to go to MIT and look at their areas. And so on a much smaller scale, because we are limited to the space that we have, we are creating that vibe. We're creating that experience as best as we can. This is the first time that I'm hearing from Mrs. Reese that there was a concern about the hallway. I wish that had been brought to my attention earlier. I would have better answers for you. This is the first time I'm hearing it today, and so I will check into that. I will get those answers. And I do apologize to you, Mrs. Reese, about the funding issue. I didn't know that was unclear, and so we will do a better job of talking about that as we move forward. It is Chartwells will be bringing some of their equipment in, but it's not the actual physical remodeling of the area is paid for by the district. There are some of the elements of the food service, like our own schools, that they will bring in that will not be a cost to us, but there are other elements in the remodeling of the school that is a cost to us. And so I do apologize to you for not being clear and upfront on that. That is something that I didn't know was an issue.
Dr. Thomason, I think too, I need to do better as far as, what gets on a work study too, and asking to make sure that these kind of things get into a work study presentation and not just straight to a vote. I know it's been odd times for us as a board and getting together. I too just didn't know that this was coming right away. So I apologize too that it wasn't us working closer together and getting a work study and having those conversations.
President Kaler. Just a couple things on something that Mr. Witovich had mentioned on the staffing and the availability. I have huge concerns with that, and I can only speak to Williamsfield. My daughter provides tutoring once a week through NHS. And I can tell you, and that would be done in the library for them. And from the time they returned after winter break, before we went on spring break, she's supposed to tutor every Thursday. The library was open twice. She was only able to provide tutoring to others twice during that time frame. When they would show up after school, the library would be closed for whatever reason. And so going to something like this, we need to be very, very careful that we have it appropriately staffed. To Mr. Witovich's point, and Mr. Glover, this could be a great thing, but if it's always closed because we don't have the staffing for it, then it's not a great thing, and it just becomes, quite frankly, very irritating to these kids that they are only going to have limited times to utilize it. They'll have before school, they'll have lunch, and they'll have after school. Those are the only times that it can be fully utilized without being sent there by a teacher, without they're in class otherwise. I mean, we don't have, it's not like a college, we have a break in class periods. We do have some who get out earlier. Our seniors may have release times, but again, it comes to appropriately staffed and making sure that that's available to them. So we need to really be very, very careful on how we staff this to ensure it has the right person, that it's inviting, that it's not, go be quiet. We're trying to get away from your typical library and media center, be quiet, go sit down, you're making too much noise. We're asking students to interact with each other at an appropriate volume, but we're asking them to interact with each other. We're asking them to do other things. And if we don't have the right person there, and if it's not open, then what are we doing this for? We want to make sure that our students get out of it what the intention there is. And you had mentioned that Chartwell's is doing a $400,000 loan. Am I to assume that $400,000 is in addition to this $995 for the
No.
total cost?
That is not correct. That is the total cost.
So the total cost is the $995, and that includes the $400,000 loan from Chartwell's.
I believe it's a $200,000 loan. I would have to work with Mr. Holland on that aspect, but I believe that is correct. But it's not to exceed the amount that you have there, the $995.
Okay.
Mrs. Wilson.
All right. I've heard about this since I think I began the board. There's been conversation about the media centers, how we're gonna, I was over in Higley High, and I believe Dr. Thomason, I had asked what smells in here? And he said, it's definitely the carpet. It needs to be replaced. So I'm actually really excited to see this. I think it could feel like a hub. I'm looking at both drawings. I do see a discrepancy, but I think it's just based on space. From people, I've read enough architectural drawings to notice that. I think that Williamsfield also has that new wing where they get to utilize that one large room that I remember talking about in-depthly. I would have loved to see this in a work study, as everyone has said, but this is how it's brought to us because of the times. And that stinks sometimes, but we know that sometimes we just work with what we have. Staffing, Dr. Thomason and I had the same question as all of you, and I asked him our weekly phone call on Monday about it, and I would like to hand it over to him to answer what he had told me about the staffing, because I was concerned as well about that staffing piece, because sometimes, from my understanding, the one at Higley High, from my son only, which I know I'm taking with a grain of salt, isn't really utilized now. So I'm sure that person probably has a very different job now than they would in the future if we're going to have this robust, room that we're expecting students to go to. We need to make sure that right staff person is in. So I'm going to give you the floor just for a second, and then I would like it back if I can. Not to demand, but just to finish my thought.
Yes, President Kaler and Mrs. Wilson. First and foremost, we are moving the stations for the media center specialists to the center of the room, so they'll be able to view the entire room from one location. So there's not going to be hidden corners in that aspect, so they can view the whole room. I hope that more access to all students is an issue, and that we will have to add more staffing to it. I hope that's a problem that I would like to take on and enjoy. And so, should this area be more utilized and more popular with all the students, definitely more staffing will be allocated to there. But we also have to know that we will have Chartwell's employees in there too. They'll be running the kitchen area, and so regardless of the current staffing, there will be more staffing when this is complete, even though there'll be Chartwell's individuals. But yes, I hope that the problem is that we have too many kids that want to go in there, and we have to add extra staffing. That is something that we've talked about. That is something that we're prepared to move forward with should those issues be necessary, and should we have such popularity with those areas that we have to add more staffing. That's something we're prepared to do.
We also talked about Wednesday mornings, what that would look like. This might be an area that they could hang out before school starts, since there is that extra PD time for the teachers, depending on how we're going to use that space. Also, the collaboration space looks great to me in both rooms. It looks like these tables possibly could be even able to move around, correct, Dr. Fowler? Yeah.
Yes, that is correct.
So they're going to be able to roll a lot more easily than, say, other tables. So honestly, that looks great to me as well. And I like the flexible seating so much so that I think even in the video, they had one of the similar seats as Higley High with the, I don't know what you would call it, the little wavy S-looking thing that was in the video. So I'm actually really excited about it. I think it looks very similar to the video one, with a stricter budget and using the space that we have. So I want to thank you because I think it looks great.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. Yes, I have looked at this very carefully, and it's so much better than what we have right now. Our libraries were literally like ghost towns, to be very honest. They were used for testing here and there. And I do know that we have a new staff at Higley High who's so excited for this. Very, very excited to be a part of this. And again, I guess we should talk a little bit about staffing, Mrs. Martins, and just what is that role? I mean, is this going to change the role of a media specialist with having all of this going on? I guess that is definitely a conversation that we should be having. And I guess, again, my apologies for not working closer to get a work study on this. And if the board feels that we still need a work study on this, I'm not opposed to that. I'm excited for the timeline, though, and any delay that we have at this end will delay moving forward. So that's also something that we need to consider.
President Kaler, members of the board, the duties and responsibilities of the Media Center specialist should not change at this time. They would still be responsible for some technology check-in, check-out. They will be responsible for the books and the reference materials that are in there. And so some of the responsibilities that we currently have would still be there. So those would be all those responsibilities. I think that maybe in additional responsibilities, if we start taking a look at some of the laptop carts that will be available there and students to check in and check those out. We're looking at many different things right now because our world of COVID has changed so many things that we don't know exactly what it's going to look like when we return in July. And so some of those things I do not have the answers for, but I do know that the current roles and responsibilities for the Media Center specialist would be the same ones that they're expected to utilize with the new Media Center remodels.
And Dr. Thomason, my own experience with libraries that have transitioned to this, having a media specialist is good, but they do get a working lunch. So a classified staff titled sort of position that's dedicated to the library would be wise. So certified and classified working together so they can each take the appropriate breaks and all that. I think you'll see over time that's probably what will happen.
Yes, I agree. We don't want it closed at lunch. That would be the last part of the day that we would want to have this closed. And I agree. I know that has been an issue at Higley, having the library closed or whatnot. I do believe moving forward, there's an excitement about this that I haven't heard before coming from Higley. I don't know how it is over at Williamsfield, but I do feel like the snack shack for the kids has been, talk of the town. So I know there's a lot of excitement over this, but again, I want to hear from my board if this is something that you feel we should not move forward with, then speak now or forever hold your peace.
President Kaler, members of the board too, I do want to let Mr. Witovich know that I did hear him loud and clear, and we'll be taking as many opportunities as we can to get counselors in there, to get our career specialists in there, to get our liaison from Chandler Gilbert Community College in there too, and utilize that as much as possible. I do agree. I do wish I had $40 million to build 2 buildings at each campus, but unfortunately we're restricted with space and funding, and so I believe this does bring the concept and the feeling to both of our campuses.
And the other, I know from the Higley standpoint and the Williamsfield, there's only so much space for our bookstore. There's only so much space for DECA to have their their sales and their kind of gear, Higley gear, Williamsfield gear. So I know it's more spaced out. It doesn't mean that DECA can't come into the media centers and have like a little booth and do some sales of t-shirts and paraphernalia. So there's lots of things that can be utilized, I think, throughout this media center that we'll get creative with.
And President Kaler, members of the board, both DECA groups at the high schools have their carts too that can be wheeled in and wheeled out, also to be utilized in that area.
Okay, so we're going to go for a vote, it looks like. So unless there's any other comments, questions, or concerns. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
Mr. Witovich?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1. Motion passes 4-1. Okay, moving on to 6.9. I move that the governing board approves the resolution to ratify the payment of longevity pay for 2017 to 2018 and 2018 to 2019.
Second.
Mrs. Martins? I know that this is, again, just something coming back to us because of compliance with the Auditor General. So if you could just kind of speak to that for a minute.
Certainly, President Kaler, members of the board. So prior to my arrival, the board at the time, through my predecessor, discussed and approved a longevity stipend, for, if you will, for all of our employees. And that year, that approval happened for the 2016-2017 academic year. Since then, there's been some controversy surrounded about that in regards to should have that been continued to be approved? Was that only a one-time thing? How was it paid out that first time? You know, we've had some additional discussion in relation to some of that. And ultimately, the guidance that we received was that we should continue to approve it every year and it be presented to the board every year. So as you just stated, President Kalar, we're going back and approving the payments that were made for 2017-2018 school year and the 2018-2019 school year. And then subsequently, later this summer, we will then present to you a list of employees who qualify based on the criteria of tenure, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and bring that to June, maybe July, in terms of authorization of payment moving forward to pay out for the 2019-2020 school year for those who met that criteria.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Martins. These were paid out. It's not that. It's that we're just making sure that it gets approved every year moving forward. Are there any comments or questions?
President Kaler?
Yes, Mrs. Reese.
Just to speak briefly on that, because I was on the board at the time, and the intention of the board at the time was that those would continue. And like Ms. Martin said, that it was, the way it was written, and going back and looking at it created some confusion. And the intention when that came before the board was simply, as it was indicating, longevity. We wanted to reward those who continued to stay with Higley at certain milestones. So I appreciate that we're looking at that and we're going to continue that. Yes, it will come before the board, because also at that point, every year always depends on, can we put it in our budget? Do we have the money for that? So while the intention is there that we would like to continue this, that conversation also happened is, as long as we can fund it, we would like to do it. So looking as our budget changes every year to bring that before the board, that we review those who have completed their milestones, not entering. So once they've completed their 5th year is when we would look at that. And I know that that was some confusion. People are like, well, I'm starting my 5th year, and the intention was once you complete your 5th year. So so I appreciate you going back and really doing, I had to dig back for that and doing research, and I'm glad that we will continue to look at that and monitor it each and every year, because we do want to thank those staff members that have been with us and continue to stay with us. So thank you for that information, Ms. Martins.
Yes, I too just want to reiterate that longevity pay, it's an awesome thing to be able to write that check. So I appreciate those that stay with us and deserve it. So we're going to vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 5-0. Okay, 6.10, we're almost done. We need to review our political agenda and reaffirm our top 5 priorities so that we can send this to the ASBA Legislative Committee by Friday, May 29th. And so Darlene has put this forth to us, and it's coming up for me slowly. Thank you, Ryan. My iPad's not loading it. So these are our political agenda priority issues for 2020. It was adequately and equitably fund district schools to at least the national median per pupil funding, preserve and strengthen local control, improve outcomes for all students, and require public accountability for taxpayer dollars spent on education. Now, according to the ASBA, we can actually add 2 more, I believe it is. Correct, Darlene? It was 2 more things, or we can just agree with this I know Dr. Glover. I know Mr. Glover, this is his favorite event of the year. And I've already confirmed he's already signed up to go again. But anywho, he's a great representation of us on these issues, and I appreciate Mr. Glover's insight. So if there's anything different, anything you'd like to add? Mr. Glover? Come on, there's got to be something. I know, I'm waiting.
It asked us to pick out 5, and I picked out like 10, but I don't want to like full day K, I think is a recognized as one of the most sound investments you can make in education. The restoration of district additional assistance fully, we've been promised it. I would like to still see that happen. There's a whole bunch of things. The only thing I didn't see in there, and we don't have to add it, but if you do happen to send me, and it's in person, I may mention this, I don't think we've dedicated enough resources to pay raises for support staff. I mean, we've piecemealed it, and it hasn't been a top priority. I know in Higley we have done everything we can, but as a state, I feel like our bus drivers, our paras, some of the people that are handing out lunches have not been compensated evenly with teachers, and I understand. So that was one thing. The other thing I think is a real way we can put more money back in the classroom that no one ever wants to talk about because it's uncomfortable, but like a statewide pool for health insurance would really save us a lot of money that we could dump back in. As it is now, we're all competing against one another, and it's you can only negotiate so much when you only have a few thousand people, but if you have tens of thousands of people, you could really save some money. And I'm old enough to remember in the 90s and the 80s, people took government jobs because you had a pension and you had decent insurance. And we're trying to unravel both of those things right now. And as an organization, they would be wise to start talking about that as a way to save money and then put more money subsequently into the classroom. But that's not on there. I don't expect you guys to get on board. But, a waterfall starts with a drop of water, so we got to start talking about it.
Mr. Glover, I know that even like the Screen Actor Guild, if you are part of that in California, you are part of their insurance policies. And so there's big groups that get together and do collaborate for better insurance policies. So I understand your concern. Mrs. Wilson.
I like the idea of the pay raises for support staff. And I like that. Why do I want to call you Dr. Glover all the time? I mean, just please get the doctorate already. I appreciate that Mr. Glover brought that up. I think that's a great point that we could add to it. If we can add to our list, I like our list. I like that it's asking, the one that I think is the most is making sure that everyone's being, where is it? The transparency, the last one, establishing financial and academic transparency for all institutions that accept public funds. That one to me is for all. Yes, I'm going to make that a very big point. I'm going to read that point again. Hold on. For all that take taxpayer public funds. I think that's the most important in my world. But I think that what Mr. Glover said about the support staff, it would be a great add if we can add one more, if Darlene says that's okay.
Darlene's only giving us 2 more. Then she's going to cut us off. I'm good with adding that if that's something that the board would like to put forth. How would you word that?
I might say to advocate for dedicated funding source for pay raises for support staff.
Darlene was typing that perfectly.
Oh. Okay.
What was your other? That's something else.
Oh, I don't expect you guys to hop on
board
with that. I know.
But I agree, Mr. Glover. Some of those positions are not sustainable for living wages for our staff, and so I agree. I think we can add that one. Mr. Witovich, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
No, thank you.
Thank you,
Mr. Glover. I'm very surprised you didn't bring up about testing.
It was on my list. I didn't want to bore you.
I was waiting for that because I think you have really good points on, are we over testing these kids and what what outcomes are we getting and what's the purpose and what are we doing to our teachers because they're consistently evaluating. And like you said, even that's an uncomfortable conversation because we want that checks and balance. We want that to feel valid in what we're doing. But I agree. I think we are over-evaluating our students and not giving them time to soak in the information and putting that on our teachers. So I was waiting for you to say that, and because I think, like you said, I mean, a waterfall starts with a drop of water, and a lot of people don't want to say that we test too much, and I think that that's something we should consider bringing forward. Like, we really do need to look at what testing we're doing, if it's state testing, local testing, what is it? What should we be doing? So I would like to, since you didn't, I was waiting.
I'm sure he has it written down
I'm
like
sure he
perfectly,
does.
so let's,
I would like to see us start seeing, presenting that to the ASBA and seeing if they can, if it's something they're interested in supporting from a political standpoint.
Well, Mrs. Reese, I adore you for saying that. Thank you. There is one in there that says limit the use of state standardized testing data, but as you were so eloquently saying, we talk about all the things the kids are missing, graduation, all that. You will not, just please call me if anyone tells you we really miss taking our state tests. Let me know if someone says that, because I don't think anyone is going to say that they've missed the stress and the preparation and the time taken away from other more productive things. And now is a great year to recognize that, and I thank you for calling that to everyone's attention.
I would fully support adding that as well. So do you have that eloquently written as well, Mr. Glover?
Well, President Kaler, they have limit the use of state standardized testing data.
I think we should.
Well,
I
let's
think
noodle
they're
it around
using
a
the
bit.
data. Let's take the word.
I would like it worded differently. I don't love the wording that they have because it's just using the data,
data.
and I think that they
still want the
use
state tests.
Yes, I want to limit state testing more because of the anxiety it's causing for our kids, our teachers, our staff. We're seeing it in record numbers. So I just think that would be a better worded, but I know Mr. Glover has a better wording than us, so I'm going to leave it to him.
And we are moving these kids through, and they all didn't take their finals. And our college kids are going off to college, and I'm sure many are going to be absolutely just fine. So I agree, Mr. Glover, if we can add that, I would totally be in support.
So we need some wording for Darlene.
Yeah, I'm struggling with the verb here, but rethink the role and purpose of state standardized testing, but rethink is not to help me, Dr. Foley.
Reevaluate. Reevaluate.
Microphone.
I actually liked your rethinking because I'm not sure that that's the right word, but I think that obviously assessment serves a purpose, but what kind of assessment and how frequent and meaningful versus plentiful. I think the idea of rethinking or reevaluating or redefining the use of meaningful assessment, redesigning, reevaluating, or
You're still looking at me.
Meaning-
Rethink
I like
and
redefine.
redefine the role and purpose of state standardized testing?
Of meaningful meaningful testing. I like that. I liked how you said meaningful testing, because we do still want some tests, but they need to be meaningful and they need to serve a purpose.
All
I
right.
agree. I think some evaluation, some testing, some checks and balance, like, okay, we want to make sure that they are getting what's being taught and everything. So there is a purpose for some of it, but as Mr. Glover lets us know, any chance he gets, we over-test our kids. And so I think that's a really good phrase, so.
All right, how's this? Rethink and redefine the role and purpose of state standardized testing and meaningful assessment. because they don't have to be the same thing.
Darlene, would you like him to say that again? She's so good.
Got
Thank
it?
you.
Okay.
Thank you.
all,
Okay,
everybody.
2. All done. But I still know that Mr. Glover, if we nominate you, which we will, to go to the delegate, if there is one, then I know you still speak to many things on our behalf, and we do appreciate what you bring forth to that assembly every year.
And thank you for going, because after law conference, it's exhausting to think to drive up there one more day. So thank you for taking one for us.
And we do not have to vote on that, do we, Mrs. Reach? We just had to submit those, so, okay. Future agenda items. We still have some things coming up. Our HPAL, our technology update, how we prepare students, athletics, and athletic eligibility. I would like to see perhaps Dr. Thomason, and this can either be a future work study, probably not work study, it would probably be better in your superintendent's report, but the work organizational chart for next year. I would like to see who is in charge of whom moving forward for, and what their duties are going to be looking like. I know that we're adding some staff sooner than later. Dr. Foley could not be more thrilled that 2, I believe, are starting June 1st now instead of July. Okay, okay, sooner, yes, thank you. So I just want to see that breakdown for the board, and I suppose that could be in your superintendent's report. And then I guess to just keep us really informed as Dr. Foley and, hears state, it's going to be very important for us as a board to be aware of how schools are going to be looking possibly for July. I don't want any surprises for anybody. I want us to all be, behind our district and supporting whatever those decisions are. So I would just love to know that information.
President Kaler, members of the board, we know that we've entered phase 1 now of the governor's return to normalcy. And so at this time, for the next couple of weeks, we'll be working on the phase 2 plans and what that will look like for the Higley Unified School District for our summer and for our community education programs and for our schools. And so we're already on top of that and making sure that we're prepared when phase 2 does come about.
And in the superintendent's report, can we find out what our plan will be moving forward with Kids Club? Because I know I've had a couple parents ask me if we are going to have a Kids Club, how we're going to handle that, and I haven't really known. So I just said, we're following the governor's orders, but if we could just have an update on that in the superintendent's report would be great. President
Kaler and Mrs. Wilson absolutely will have that in there, but that will be a phase 2 component.
President Kaler, can I ask also, when we get to the athletic piece, the student athletic eligibility and the clearance requirements, Dr. Thomason, when we get to that in our work study, can we be provided information what our membership is with AIA? What do they provide? Obviously, I know that they oversee the Arizona sports, but what does our membership mean? What do they provide? What do we have access to their financials? What do they cover? I have to tell you, because I am very concerned that the AIA took part in the Paycheck Protection Program that was federally funded. And as a member of that organization, I don't know if we have the right to their financials. What would the purpose of them taking that? And then what does that mean to their membership? Because obviously their membership supports their association, so what does that mean to the membership? And so I think just that we're better informed when we get to that. It ties all in with our athletics, so we're better informed when we get to that piece, that we can understand that full circle even outside of what our district does. What limitations do we have? What does our membership mean? They've had some legal issues lately. What does that mean to membership? So if we can kind of tie all that together when we get to that work study, I would like to be more informed on what we're paying for. What does that mean? How does that affect our athletes, financials, things like that?
President Kaler, Vice President Reese, we will definitely add that. I know that Dr. Fowler is part of the executive board, although we can't talk about it during this meeting because it was not part of our board agenda. We will definitely get that information to you. I do believe it's a great work study topic, and I hope that we're able to go back to work studies sooner than later because of the COVID-19 situation. I think that would be a great opportunity to have some dialogue back and forth, so I look forward to that.
Thank you. And I mean, even moving forward, worst case scenario, we could do a work study here with spaced apart. So moving forward, we can definitely make those happen. Mr. Witovich, do you have anything?
No, I do not.
Did he say no? Okay, thank you. Anything else? All right, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Stay well.